Sometimes the most beautiful dreams become the most devastating nightmares. Sometimes the people who promise to save you are the ones who destroy you completely. My name is David, and this is the story of how I lost everything in Bangkok while searching for a second chance at life. If you're planning to travel alone, especially to Southeast Asia, you need to hear this. What happened to me could happen to anyone. If you like stories that reveal the dark truth behind paradise, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Your location might save someone else from making my mistakes. 3 months ago, I was sitting in my empty apartment in Pittsburgh, staring at my retirement papers. 57 years old, divorced for 8 years, kids who barely called. My accounting firm had given me a decent package, but decent doesn't fill the silence that echoes through your life when you realize you've spent 30 years building nothing but bank statements. The walls felt like they were closing in. Every morning was the same gray routine, the same empty conversations with the mailman, the same microwave dinners eaten in front of the same boring television shows. That's when I saw the travel documentary about Bangkok. The narrator talked about reinvention, about finding yourself in exotic places where nobody knows your past failures. The images were intoxicating. Golden temples, bustling markets, warm smiles from strangers who seemed genuinely happy. It looked like the opposite of everything my life had become. So I did something crazy. I sold my furniture, bought a one-way ticket, and decided to find out who David really was when he wasn't hiding behind spreadsheets and loneliness. Landing at Suvarnabhumi Airport felt like stepping into another universe. The humidity hit me like a wall, but it was warm. After years of Pittsburgh winters, that warmth felt like a hug from the universe itself. The taxi ride into the city was sensory overload. The colors were brighter, the sounds were louder, the smells were intense mixtures of street food, incense, and life happening at full volume. I rented a small apartment near Khao San Road. Nothing fancy, but it had a balcony where I could watch the chaos below and feel like I was finally participating in something real. For the first week, I was a tourist drunk on freedom. I visited temples, ate street food that made my tongue dance, took long walks through markets where vendors smiled and tried to teach me Thai words. But slowly, the novelty wore off, and a familiar feeling crept back in. Loneliness doesn't respect geography. It follows you anywhere you go. I found myself sitting alone in restaurants, surrounded by couples and groups of friends, feeling more isolated than ever. The language barrier made everything harder. Simple tasks became exhausting adventures. I started spending more time in my apartment, watching Netflix and wondering if running away to Thailand was just another mistake in a long list of mistakes. That's when I met her. I was sitting alone at a rooftop bar in Siloam, nursing my second beer and watching the Bangkok skyline light up as the sun disappeared. The city looked magical from up there, millions of lights twinkling like fallen stars. I was taking a picture with my phone when I heard a voice behind me. The view is even better at sunset. I turned around, and there she was. Her name was Siri, but she told me to call her Siri. She was stunning in that effortless way that makes you forget how to breathe properly. Long black hair, kind eyes that seemed to actually see me, and a smile that felt genuine after weeks of polite tourist interactions. She was wearing a simple blue dress that somehow looked elegant and casual at the same time. But what struck me most wasn't her beauty. It was how she looked at me like I was interesting, like I had stories worth hearing. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. "I hate drinking alone, and you look like you could use some company." We talked for 3 hours. Not the surface-level conversation I'd grown used to, but real talk. She asked about my life back home, and when I told her about the divorce, the loneliness, the feeling of starting over at 57, she didn't give me the usual platitudes. She just nodded and said, "Starting over is brave. Most people just accept being miserable." She told me she worked in marketing for a hotel chain, that she'd grown up in Bangkok but loved meeting travelers because they reminded her to see her own city with fresh eyes. Her English was perfect, with just a slight accent that made everything she said sound like music. When she laughed at my awkward jokes about cultural differences, it felt real. When she touched my arm while making a point, I felt electricity I hadn't experienced in years. The evening ended with her giving me her number and a soft kiss on the cheek. "Text me tomorrow, David," she said. "I want to show you the Bangkok that tourists never see." That night, I couldn't sleep, not because of jet lag or the street noise, but because for the first time in years, I was excited about tomorrow. The next few weeks were the happiest of my adult life. Siri became my guide to a Bangkok I never would have discovered alone. She took me to hidden temples where monks blessed us with incense and kind words. We ate at family restaurants tucked away in alleys where the grandmother insisted on cooking special dishes just for the American boyfriend of her favorite regular customer. We took long walks through parks where she taught me to feed the fish and told me stories about growing up in Thailand. But it wasn't just the activities, it was how she made me feel. For the first time since my divorce, maybe for the first time ever, I felt like someone's priority. She texted me good morning every day with little heart emojis. She remembered details from conversations we'd had days earlier. When I mentioned missing good pizza, she surprised me by taking me to a tiny Italian place run by an expat from New York. When I got food poisoning from street vendor pad thai, she showed up at my apartment with medicine, soup, and spent the entire day taking care of me. The romance developed naturally, or at least it felt natural. She never rushed anything, never seemed to want anything from me except my company. When I offered to pay for dinner, she'd insist we split the bill. When I wanted to buy her gifts, she'd laugh and say, "Your time is the only gift I want." She made me feel generous without being taken advantage of, loved without being used. After a month, I was completely smitten. This wasn't just vacation romance. This felt like the real thing. I started imagining a future. Maybe I could get a work visa, teach English, build a life here with her. Maybe I could be the kind of man who deserved someone like Siri. The loneliness that had followed me from Pittsburgh was gone, replaced by a warmth I'd forgotten existed. Then came the first request. We were having dinner at our favorite riverside restaurant when her phone rang. She apologized and stepped away to take the call. When she came back, her face was pale with worry. "David, I'm so sorry, but I have to go," she said, her voice tight with stress. "My younger brother is in trouble. He was in a motorbike accident, and he's at the hospital. I need to get there right away." Of course, I offered to come with her, but she shook her head. "You're so sweet, but family things are complicated. I'll call you later tonight." She didn't call that night, or the next morning. When she finally texted me the following afternoon, it was a message that made my heart sink. "David, I'm so sorry I haven't called. It's been terrible. My brother needs surgery, but our family doesn't have enough money saved. The doctors want 50,000 baht up front, and we can only come up with 30,000. I'm so embarrassed to even mention this, but I don't know what else to do. I can't lose him." 50,000 baht was about $1,500. Not a fortune, but not nothing either. More importantly, this was the woman I was falling in love with, and her family was in crisis. The decision felt obvious. "How can I help?" I texted back immediately. Her response came quickly, but it felt different, more formal, more distant. "I could never ask you for money, David. We barely know each other. I shouldn't have even mentioned it. Please forget I said anything." But I couldn't forget it. The idea of Siri losing her brother because of money when I had the ability to help felt impossible to accept. I walked to the nearest bank and sent a wire transfer for the full amount. When I texted her confirmation, her response was pure gratitude. "David, you are an angel. I will pay you back as soon as I can. My family will never forget your kindness. I love you." It was the first time she'd said she loved me. The timing should have felt wrong, but it didn't. It felt like the natural result of showing up when someone needed me most. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like a hero. 2 days later, she called with wonderful news. The surgery was successful. Her brother was going to make a full recovery. She wanted to celebrate with dinner. Somewhere special to thank me properly. She chose an upscale restaurant in the Thongla district, the kind of place with white tablecloths and wine lists that cost more than most people's weekly salary. "Tonight is my treat," she insisted when I protested about the expense. "You saved my brother's life. The least I can do is buy you the best meal in Bangkok." The dinner was perfect. The food was incredible. The wine was smooth and expensive, and Siri was more affectionate than she'd ever been. She held my hand across the table, told me how much I meant to her, how I'd shown her what real love looked like. By the time we finished the second bottle of wine, I was floating on clouds. "Let's go somewhere quieter," she suggested, her voice low and intimate. "I know a place." The place was a private karaoke bar in a basement club I'd never heard of. It felt exclusive, dimly lit, with leather couches and expensive whiskey. Siri seemed to know the staff, which impressed me. She ordered drinks, while I tried to figure out how the karaoke machine worked. The whiskey was smooth. Too smooth. I remember singing badly to American classic rock, while she laughed and applauded. I remember her sitting close to me on the couch, her hand on my leg, whispering how happy I made her. I also remember the drinks keeping coming, even when I thought I'd had enough. Every time I'd finish one, another would appear. Siri kept encouraging me to relax, to celebrate, to enjoy myself. "You work so hard," she kept saying. "You deserve to have fun." The last thing I clearly remember is her helping me stand up to leave, her arm around my waist, guiding me toward the exit. Everything after that is fragments. Flashes of neon lights. The sound of traffic. Her voice, soothing and distant, telling me everything was okay. I woke up in my apartment with the worst hangover of my life. My head felt like it was splitting in half. My mouth tasted like I'd been chewing on cotton balls soaked in regret. The sunlight streaming through my curtains felt like laser beams directly into my brain. I was still wearing my clothes from the night before, but they were wrinkled and smelled like cigarettes and cheap cologne I didn't recognize. It took me several minutes to piece together where I was and what had happened. The karaoke bar, the whiskey. Siri helping me home. I felt embarrassed about drinking so much, but also grateful that she'd taken care of me. I reached for my phone to text her an apology and found 17 missed calls from my bank's fraud department. That's when the real nightmare began. The first thing I noticed was that my laptop was gone. It had been sitting on the desk by the window, and now there was just an empty space. My stomach dropped, but I told myself not to panic. Maybe I'd moved it somewhere in my drunken state and forgotten. Then I checked my wallet. My credit cards were there, but the cash I always kept for emergencies was gone. About $800 in various currencies, money I'd been saving for emergencies or special occasions. Now it was just empty leather. But the missed calls from the bank were what really terrified me. I called them back with shaking hands. "Mr. Johnson, we've been trying to reach you about some unusual activity on your account," the customer service representative said. "There were several large withdrawals yesterday evening and early this morning. We wanted to confirm these were authorized transactions." The withdrawals totaled nearly $4,000, 3 separate ATM transactions, each for the maximum daily limit, scattered across Bangkok between midnight and 6 a.m. Someone had been very busy with my debit card while I was unconscious. "Sir, do you still have possession of your debit card?" the representative asked. I checked my wallet again. The card was there, right where it should be. But someone had clearly used it. Someone who knew my PIN number. The room started spinning, and it wasn't from the hangover. I tried calling Siri immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. I sent texts asking if she was okay, if she knew what had happened, if someone had broken into my apartment after she dropped me off. The messages showed as delivered but never read. Hours passed. No response. I called again and again until eventually the number was disconnected. The woman I'd fallen in love with. The woman I'd given money to save her brother. The woman who told me she loved me just 12 hours earlier had vanished completely. That's when I started putting the pieces together. The expensive restaurant where she insisted on paying. The private karaoke bar where the drinks never stopped coming. The way she'd guided me out while I could barely stand. The missing cash. The ATM withdrawals. The laptop that was worth more than most people in Bangkok, made in a month. I'd been robbed. Not by strangers who broke into my apartment, but by the woman I trusted most in the world. The woman who'd made me feel loved for the first time in years. The woman who'd made me believe in second chances and new beginnings. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was the realization that none of it had been real. The conversations, the laughter, the intimate moments, the declarations of love, it had all been performance art designed to separate me from my savings. I wasn't her boyfriend. I was her job. The next few days were a blur of bureaucratic hell. Police reports that went nowhere because I couldn't prove anything beyond reasonable doubt. Bank investigations that revealed my PIN had been entered correctly, suggesting I'd given it willingly. Embassy visits where board officials explained that romance scams were unfortunately common and rarely prosecuted successfully. The problem, one police officer explained through a translator, is that you gave her money voluntarily. You went out with her voluntarily. You drank with her voluntarily. Even if we could find her, which is unlikely since Siriporn is probably not her real name, it would be very difficult to prove criminal intent. I was trapped in bureaucratic limbo, hemorrhaging money on extended hotel stays while getting exactly nowhere with authorities who seemed more annoyed by my presence than sympathetic to my situation. That's when I discovered I wasn't alone. Sitting in an internet cafe, desperately Googling Bangkok romance scam, I found forum after forum filled with stories just like mine. Different names, different faces. But the same script played out over and over again. Meet the lonely foreigner. Make him feel special. Create an emergency that requires money. Celebrate the generosity with expensive drinks. Rob him blind while he's unconscious. Disappear completely. One forum post included photos. My blood ran cold when I saw a picture taken secretly in a bar. It was Siri, but the post called her Niran. She was sitting with a different Western man, her hand on his arm, the same intimate pose she'd used with me, the same genuine-looking smile, the same eyes that seemed to see into your soul. The post was from 6 months ago. The victim was a German engineer who'd lost nearly $10,000 to the same woman using the same methods. The same sick brother story, the same private karaoke bar, the same mysterious disappearance. I scrolled through more posts and found her again. Different name each time, Ploy, Nim, Anshali, but the same face, the same story. Always a family emergency, always grateful tears, always expensive celebration drinks, always empty bank accounts and broken hearts left behind. She was a professional. This wasn't desperation or opportunity. This was her career. I'm back in Pittsburgh now, sitting in a different apartment because I couldn't bear to return to the old one. The grey walls and empty silence feel even more oppressive than before because now I know what warmth feels like. And I know it was all fake. The money I lost set back my retirement by years, but the emotional damage feels permanent. I keep thinking about those 3 weeks when I believed I'd found love. How real it felt. How she made me laugh at jokes that weren't funny, made me feel interesting when I talked about my boring life, made me believe I was the kind of man someone could choose to be with. The cruelest part is that those feelings were real, even if everything that caused them was carefully constructed lies. Sometimes I catch myself missing her. Not the criminal who robbed me, but the woman I thought she was. The woman who remembered I liked my coffee black and brought me soup when I was sick. The woman who held my hand while we walked through night markets and translated conversations with vendors. The woman who made me believe I deserved happiness. That woman never existed. She was a character in a play, and I was the audience member stupid enough to believe the performance was real. I'm telling you this story not for sympathy, but as a warning. If you're planning to travel alone, especially if you're recently single, recently retired, recently vulnerable in any way, you need to understand that predators can smell loneliness from across an ocean. They know exactly what you're looking for before you do, and they're professionals at providing it. The signs were all there, but I was too desperate to see them. She never asked for money directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she created situations where helping felt like the natural, heroic thing to do. She never seemed interested in my money until she needed to access my bank account. She made me feel like the pursuer, like I was winning her over, when really she was reeling me in like a fish who thinks he's swimming freely. The most dangerous predators aren't the ones who look scary. They're the ones who look like everything you've ever wanted. They study you, learn your weaknesses, and become exactly what you need them to be. They make you complicit in your own destruction by making you believe you're choosing it. If someone seems too perfect, if the connection feels too instant, if the relationship moves too fast, if emergencies coincidentally happen right after you've shown you have money, run. Your loneliness is not worth bankruptcy. Your desire for connection is not worth emotional devastation. Love yourself enough to be suspicious of anyone who claims to love you too quickly. Real love takes time to develop. Real love doesn't require immediate financial assistance. Real love doesn't disappear the moment things get complicated. I learned this lesson the most expensive way possible. I'm sharing it so maybe you won't have to. The paradise I went looking for in Bangkok was real. It just wasn't the one being sold to me by someone who saw my loneliness as a business opportunity. The real paradise would have been learning to be happy alone first, learning to value myself enough that I didn't need external validation to feel worthy of love. That's the lesson I'm still learning. In this gray apartment, in this cold city, with a bank account that will take years to rebuild and a heart that might take even longer. But I'm learning it, and maybe that's worth something too. If this story helped you, or if you know someone who needs to hear it, please share it. Predators rely on silence and shame to keep operating. The more we talk about these schemes, the harder it becomes for them to find new victims. And remember, your worth isn't determined by whether someone chooses to love you. Your worth is inherent, and anyone who tries to convince you otherwise while emptying your bank account is not someone you want in your life anyway. Stay safe out there. The world is full of people who will genuinely care about you, but they're also the ones who won't need access to your ATM card to prove it.